Hi everyone, welcome to my review of Forrest Gump in 1994. Of course, directed by Robert Zemeckis, and here is the Blu-ray. We are here to review Forrest Gump, and yes, this film, of course, it's actually going to be the last film I review as well. Before Christmas, and I'll be back again. But in a few days, not actually uploading content. I might film some stuff, kind of as I sometimes do. If I've just watched a film, so the thoughts are fresh in my mind. I sometimes film. I won't be uploading anything, kind of editing and stuff until probably the 28th or the 29th again. So this will be the last film until then. So yes, Forrest Gump. It's one of the traditional films that I now watch at Christmas. It's weird to kind of. It's not really a Christmas film or anything. It's just a case of. It's always, as a kid, it was one of my favourite films, and I saw it at quite a young age, probably about 7, something like that. And just a couple of years ago, I kind of, when I rewatched it again, after a couple of years gap, I thought, yeah, that was really good to watch it, kind of December time, so last year again, I watched it December, and here we are again. It's kind of a tradition now to kind of watch it, around Christmas time, and yes. This film is very, very divisive, and actually, I loved it as a kid, and, I think, once I kind of sort of computer and all this kind of stuff, and I kind of started looking into critical, reviews and everything, basically, I was kind of shocked to hear that some people, thought this film was bad. It's not just a case of, it being under par. Some people think this is an awful film. Of course, criticism, it's all subjective at the end of the day, but, it has got quite a strong, case of hate, this film. Now, of course, my review will be based on my thoughts, and everything. And, if you have different opinions, of course, be respectful and everything. But this film, it's got a lot of love. It's got a lot of hate as well. And kind of the IMDb rating is, I believe, an 8.8. I think, it's in the top 20. But there are some that don't like it too much, and it did win six Oscars, in that year. Of course, 1994 was one of the best years in film. Of course, you have Pulp Fiction, you have The Shawshank Redemption, which at times is called the best film ever made. You've got The Lion King, which people don't actually talk about as much, in terms of the best film that year. And actually, we'll get to that when I review it. But this film. It's definitely, hated on, I think, as well, a lot because of the Oscars, which I won't get into too much. But for me, I've always thought this film is an absolute masterpiece. It's always been one of my top 25 films. It's never really left that, and really, it is just a masterpiece. It's one of the very best films ever made for me. I just don't quite see how it gets hate. But yeah, this film, of course. Most people have seen it, but I will be putting, we'll be going over some spoilers in this review. So be warned. If you've not seen it and you want to see this review, or maybe just skip to the end, or just watch the film. Of course, highly recommend it. Of course, Robert Zemeckis, one of my favourite directors of all time when he's on form. And of course, The Polar Express I reviewed. I think it's a lovely film, wonderful film. This one, it is even better. It is far better. It's in my top 25 films of all time. I think this film, of course, it's the story of Forrest Gump, played wonderfully by Tom Hanks, who also got an Oscar for Best Actor. And, I think, based on what was that year, I agree, definitely the best performance in a leading role. And, I think actually this is the second best film of 1994. I do personally think it's better than The Shawshank Redemption. I do, and I think it's better than Pulp Fiction. So yes, this film it tells the story of Forrest Gump, who's basically, he's not, he's got learning difficulties, everything, and his IQ is, below the normal kind of level, and his mum, of course, played by Sally Field, kind of she struggles to get him, she fights for his education at the beginning and everything, and basically, he goes through different events, throughout the film, which basically are, very, very famous big events of the late 20th century, of course, the Vietnam War, different. You see, of course, the different presidents, and their, of course, assassinations, the many assassinations, of different presidents, and you see this character go through all these events, but of course, he's an everyman, and of course, he kind of challenged in many ways, and he basically, it's a very, very. this is an epic film in many ways, you know, in its scope, what it covers, you know, but also it's highly personal, you know, and this, of course, this love story as well, and just the different friendships that he forms over the film, you know, are just wonderful. Of course, this film is told, most of the film is told him kind of recounting, you know, what has happened, you know, of course, to various people on the bench, you know, when he's about to get the bus, and then of course, you know, the kind of last half an hour or so is when it is, of course, like real time kind of thing. And yeah, basically, I've always loved this film. For me, this is just you know, one of the most spiritual films, moving films I've ever seen. You know, I think this definitely has Tom Hanks' you know, best performance he's ever given, even better than Saving Private Ryan, Castaway. You know, all these films. You know, he's one of the best actors of all time for me, Tom Hanks, and you know, this is his best performance. Has been criticised, yeah, but I think it's truly wonderful. The emotion, but also just how kind of he keeps this up. You know, it's a very, very hard role to play, and it's nothing like anything really he's ever done. You could say the closest is the film Big to this in terms of performance, but really this you know, this is a very, very hard film performance to put off, and it's so consistent and it never breaks, and it's just very, very emotional. This performance, wonderful, and yeah, basically, you know, just the journey of this film is something that is just so emotional. I love the early act, you know, kind of this film, you know, the kind of nostalgic childhood scenes. It could not have been better, and you know, just all the performances, just the emotion, the sincerity of it all. You know, it's the perfect setup, and of course, he meets his friend Jenny, who basically, she's really the only person that kind of talks to him and everything, of course. And yeah, basically, soon after he's kind of enlisted in the Vietnam War, and yeah, basically things of course going from there. He meets his friend Bubba as well, and you know, this film is just hilarious. You know, it really is probably one of the funniest films, and I loved, of course, the shrimp you know, discussions. It's just hilarious, and of course, Lieutenant Dan, played by Gary Sinise, is just amazing in this film. One of my favourite characters in the film, and you know, I think all the characters that are, you know, introduced throughout the first half of the film, you know, they're just so good. And then of course, you know, of course, people do die in this film. It's a spoiler-filled review, and you know, the death of Bubba is just really, really moving stuff. You know, when I was a kid, it made me cry, and it's so emotional. You know, he's only really in it for 15-20 minutes of the film, but you know, it's kind of really, really warm and kind of lovely stuff that happens. And then of course, when he dies in the war, you know, it's just a really, really moving you know, moment. And you know, I think just everything that happens in this section is really, really just powerful stuff. And you know, of course, Lieutenant Dan, you know, his character, you know, when you first see the film, you don't know that he's gonna play a massive role in the rest of the film. And you know, of course, his legs are blown off, and of course he's you know, basically bound in a wheelchair for the rest of the film. And you know, it's just the way it explores this, you know, kind of it's just so moving, and you know, just really, really, really you know, powerful stuff. And you know, of course, Jenny, her arc in the film is of course devastating. You know, it's tragic, and you know, it's just the romance, well, the love story that happens, you know, throughout this film. It's one of the best in film for me, and you know, I think very, very complex. You know, of course, throughout the film, you know, never really is allowed. You know, this romance. There's always something that happens to kind of get in the way of it, and of course, it mainly is one-sided most of the film. You know, of course, Forrest, you know, loves Jenny, but she doesn't really, you know, want the same in return. And you know, it's just really, really moving, but also beautiful. And you know, of course, it is a friendship as well, and it's one of the warmest, most powerful friendships in film. You know, and it's just, it goes to some dark places, but really, you know, this is Zemeckis' film, and you know, it is, of course, you know, mostly uplifting, and it really is one of the warmest films I've ever seen. And you know, but this film, you know, consistently, it is very, very moving for me. You know, I kind of, it moves me quite a lot. You know, even in the first act, and you know, kind of as the film goes on, in the last half an hour, it is just shattering. You know, in terms of the emotional moments, and you know, just the way it kind of culminates. It's something monumental. This film, the level of storytelling is absolutely masterful. Visually, this film is one of the best shot films for me of all time. Of course, it won quite a few awards, six Oscars, and basically film editing was one of them. Many people would say Pulp Fiction as well. Definitely better editing. I would actually say this is for me. This has got better editing than Pulp Fiction. I would have given the Oscar to this. Of course, it uses real life events, footage, kind of weaves it into the narrative wonderfully. The editing there and the effects are just so good, and it's used for humour. It's also used just to kind of course, there's different messages throughout the film. I won't get into that too much. That's more of an analysis review. But yeah, it uses it for many different effects. But really, it massively adds, to the scope of the film and the way it kind of encompasses, American history, especially, into this film. And it really is just, it's so good. I appreciate all the stuff that, was done here. Zemeckis, really. The use, of course, of all the footage is just amazing. It works for the comedy and it works for the kind of the tragedy of different events as well. Of course, John Lennon as well. The death of him, and that's kind of tapped into a little bit as well, which is tragic. And yeah, I just think this film is it's so complete in that sense. It has everything. This film, it's an epic kind of recounting different events, but it is also one of the most personal and moving human dramas I've ever seen. It's also a great comedy, and it's just the soundtrack, of course. Wow, Alan Silvestri, who's one of the best film composers of all time for me. He really gave one of the probably 30 best scores of all time in this film. It's just overwhelming with emotion. It really, really moves me to tears, and of course, it's got the moments where it's epic and kind of exhilarating, and then it's got the very, very moving parts to the score, and it just really gets me, and the way it's used in the film is absolutely flawless. And of course, the actual songs that are used in this film, of course, there's many songs in this, and it's kind of like how many more great songs can you get into this kind of soundtrack. It's so good. It's one of my favourite soundtracks of all time. And the songs used are perfect. Every single song choice, is perfectly used here. Of course, you've got Fleetwood Mac, you've got Bob Dylan in the film. You've got so many different, great artists of the century, encapsulated into this to give it feeling, to give it kind of authenticity, and just an epic and enjoyable soundtrack. Really is. And of course, combine that with the score, and it's perfect. It really is mind blowing. The acting, of course, across the board. Robin Wright, who plays Jenny, wow, really, really wonderful actress, and basically, of course, she plays one of the main characters, and it's a very, very complex character, very much so, and of course, many people don't like her character. They say that she's kind of just one-sided and annoying. I don't believe so at all. I think. Her character, her arc it is tragic, and of course, the eventual kind of, the way this film ends is shattering. It really is emotionally, and of course, she is a great character, I think, and Robin Wright gives an absolutely monumental performance. Very vulnerable at times, but also just a wonderful character. The relationship that she has with Forrest is one of the best in film, I think, in terms of how compelling it is, and just how human it is, how kind of true to life, and they're friends from a very young age, and it's just so moving, and of course the eventual satisfying kind of last 10 minutes as well. Just one of the best endings, in film for me ever. I think it's just overwhelming, and the way, of course, it kind of links into the opening shot as well. It's just perfect, and just this film overall, it's one of the most moving, just fun films. The editing in this film is perfect. It just has a wonderful flow. It seems like it's made in, it's kind of an easy film to make. Many people have said it's not layered, and I think that's just purely because Zemeckis directs with ease. It seems like, it's very, very, the flow of it's just really wonderful. Kind of makes you, you don't notice any struggles, and that really is just testament to the direction and everything. And it's not amateur or anything. Many people say it's very, very basic. I just think it's because it's so masterfully executed. And yes, there is a simplicity to this film, and that's one of the biggest kind of strengths of the film. It is a basic narrative in many ways. It's linear quite a lot of the time, and yes, it is told, of course, through kind of flashbacks and stuff, you could say. But really, it's all kind of in order mostly. But yeah, I think this film really does not get enough credit. I think it got loads of Oscars, and maybe that's kind of a lot of the time why films get hated on quite a lot. Dances with Wolves is another one. It kind of got a lot of Oscars, and that seems to be one of the most hated films as well. Not one of the most unpopular films overall, but it's kind of these films that they get a very, very strong hate, hate on them. And basically, I think this film it really deserved the Oscars that it got, and I think it's one of the best films ever made. All the acting in this film is outstanding. Everything in this film, just the wonderful human story. It's kind of so relatable. It's kind of one of the most inspirational films of all time. The way that Forrest, of course, he's one of the best characters in film. He keeps running, and keeps going, throughout all these different events. And it's kind of, in many ways, it's kind of, a way to say anyone can really achieve the American dream if they actually, just keep at it, kind of thing, and go for it. And yeah, I think it's just a very, very inspirational film. Of course, things happen to the characters around Forrest, but of course, it's just as well how he deals with these situations, and it's so moving. The character who is, of course, not he's challenged, and he's got many, many different things that hold him back, but really, not really, kind of thing. It doesn't really affect him in many ways. It's just very, very inspirational. Of course, a little bit of it deals with bullying as well, kind of at the beginning, and kind of how people become isolated, but then they find hope in friendship as well. It's just a wonderful film. It's so layered for me, in terms of the emotion, the characters, and I think it has a wonderful flow. It goes by, and you kind of think it could have been longer. I wish I'd seen more. It's always a shame to see this film end. By the end of it, I'm emotionally drained, but I want to see more of the film. I just want to watch it again. It's probably one of my most watched films of all time, and I watched it over and over as a kid. And it's one of them films that I think it's just, as a kid, you love it, and then when you kind of learn more about film, and of course you pick up on emotion even more. That it becomes even better. And to say that this is not, for me, the best Zemeckis film is just unbelievable, really. Back to the Future for me is even better than this, and that is just even higher on the best films of all time for me. But this film is a true masterpiece, a magnum opus of cinema. Of course, I have to give it, all things considered, the way it moves me, the way that I think it's so perfectly shot and edited, directed to perfection. There is not a single moment that kind of breaks tone, that doesn't speak to the human soul, that doesn't move me in every way, that doesn't make me laugh. It's got one of the best soundtracks in film. The score and the songs used, perfect. The performances are outstanding, especially Tom Hanks, and it's just Sally Field as well. Wonderful performance. It's just an absolute magnum opus, and of course it gets 100% plus, tier S, my absolute highest rating. This is a film that really, it's in my top 20 films of all time. It's that good. I think, it's very divisive, at times, and definitely there are a lot of people who hate it. There's a lot of people that love it though, and I am with the people that love this film. It's just, I would definitely say this is one of the best films ever made. Not its best, but that's just because Back to the Future is even better. It is mind blowing. This is too, and I think this is one of the most spiritual films of all time. The use of music, the acting, everything about this film, the cinematography is outstanding. You know, just the way that he weaves in, you know, kind of real footage into the film and kind of plays with that as well. You know, the effects. It's genius. It really is. The script is one of the most, you know, uplifting and moving scripts, and just the way that it's captured, the way that it's kind of all these characters are brought out through everything. You know, direction and the acting. It's something else. You know, this film, for me, is something to behold. The way it covers different events in American history and stuff. It's really, really stunning, and you know, it's not just this kind of recounted of that. It is one of the most personal human dramas of all time, and you know, of course, the first half especially is very, very funny. But really, this is one of the most moving films. You know, it really gets me emotionally every time, and I think Forrest Gump, you know, the character is one of the very best in film. Such a unique character, and you know, there's no one in cinema like Forrest Gump, really. And yeah, just all the side characters, even all their arcs and all the different kind of things that happen to them. It's such a complete and absorbing picture. And for me, it is better than Pulp Fiction and yeah, Shawshank Redemption. Many people probably be thinking, wow, you know, that's something to say that. But I do personally feel that, and it's not the best film that year for me. And yes, this it is in my top 20. And I think it's perfect. I think it's beyond perfection. You know, I don't quite get the hate for this, but yeah, everyone has their own opinions. But for me, it is just an absolute masterpiece, magnum opus, that really is only topped by one film, you know, in the filmography of Zemeckis, and that's because Back to the Future, you know, it's just so good. You know, I'll be reviewing that, of course, at some point. But Forrest Gump is one of the films I always watch now in December, and yeah, it's just a very, very special film to me. One of the most moving and inspirational films. It's epic, it's human, and you know, hilarious, and just a film that I care for so much. You know, and always want to rewatch. And yeah, it's just a film that I've watched since I was about 7, and yeah, we'll continue to watch it probably every year if I can. And of course, I won't be back until, as I say, the 28th, you know, or the 29th kind of this month. But I will be back with some reviews, and of course, tomorrow, which is Christmas Eve, we will be watching It's a Wonderful Life, my favourite Christmas film of all time, and this film means so much to me, and yeah, I can't wait to review that. Would recommend it as well, you know, around this time. Boogie Nights, pretty much the same level for me as well. Going to be reviewing that this week, and who knows, maybe the best of all of them, E.T., also a kind of festive film. Well, I watch it around December. I try to at least every year now. So yes, sometimes I watch it you know, twice a year. But yeah, this film as well, something else, and I can't wait to review that. So yes, have a great Christmas. We'll see you in a few days. Stay safe, and yes, have a nice time. And yeah, I can't wait to get back and yeah, just do some more reviews as well. And yes, thanks for watching my review.